All right, time to answer some questions. Will Greenaway 3 wants to know, what are the Patriots, speaking of Brady, going to do at the quarterback position? And this came up yesterday with Tom Curran. Tom kind of downplayed it. I think the pressure is on the Patriots to upgrade, especially with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers due to come to New England for a game this year, which undoubtedly will be in prime time.
Yeah, and Mike, you see all the players they have coming back. This could be a good football team if they can settle the quarterback position. If they get Jimmy Garoppolo, as you speculated, that would be great for them. I think they can win with Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if they can win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, but I do think they can contend for the division with the Bills and get to the playoffs and maybe have some playoff success. Who knows with Bill Belichick? I know I wouldn't want to play Bill Belichick in the playoffs, that's for sure.
Yeah, and look, the Patriots are not going to be out of the mix for very long here. They're going to find somebody, and I think there's a good chance, as we mentioned in the last segment, Jimmy Garoppolo could end up back in New England. All right, next question from iCanability. In light of how the Jared Goff and Carson Wentz extensions have unraveled, how would you handle Baker Mayfield this offseason? Fifth-year option or full-out extension? Personally, I'm a firm believer. Unless you've got Josh Allen, who I think should be undoubtedly locked into a long-term extension, or a Patrick Mahomes who already is, I think with Baker Mayfield, you wait. I think you definitely wait. You know, with Sam Darnold, he's got to prove it, and you're not interested at all. With Mayfield, yeah, you're interested, but you're not ready to do it this year, Charean. I think the Cleveland Browns definitely should wait. A lot of money into Baker Mayfield over the short term and putting themselves potentially in a position a year or two from now where they regret it.
Yeah, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz should have taught teams something, Mike. You just don't do it unless you're absolutely convinced. You look at what the Bucs did with Jameis Winston. You look at what, who else was it? The Tennessee did with Marcus Mariota, and they let them play that out and leave. The Bucs certainly upgraded. The Titans think they upgraded with Ryan Tannehill. They at least got the championship game last year with Tannehill. They found him for a cheap price from the Dolphins. So it worked out for those teams. It didn't work out so well for the Eagles. It didn't work out so well for the Rams. I'm not convinced Baker Mayfield is the franchise guy. You've got to let him play out another year and see what he does before you commit to him.
Yep, and the ultimate warning comes from those contracts done 2 years ago by the Eagles and the Rams for Wentz and Goff, respectively. Jay Luke wants to know, will the Buccaneers be able to go back-to-back? Hasn't happened since 2003, 2004. Used to happen more frequently. The salary cap era, I think, is one of the big reasons why it's ended. The Cowboys had back-to-back in the early 90s, right when free agency and the salary cap were starting to kick in. I think as more and more time goes by, what the Patriots did 03-04 is going to be more and more impressive because I think it's going to be hard to do. But frankly, if any team is built to do it, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, barring injury, and injury is always the wild card in this. I look, and it's easy to say because we're still in the afterglow of what happened on Sunday, but I think they've got as good a chance as anyone has had in the past 20 years to pull off the repeat, Charean.
And you know what helps them, Mike? To me, it helps them being in the NFC. You're away from Patrick Mahomes. You're away from Josh Allen. You don't have to play those guys. Now I know you got Aaron Rodgers. I get that. And I get that, the Rams have made some changes and you have Russell Wilson. But I still would rather, I think, play those teams than have to go through Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I just think it's an easier route to get to the Super Bowl. And the Bucs have done it. They've won one. They're confident now. I mean, they're talking like it today. We'll see what happens when they come back. But, the Chiefs figured out this year. Remember, after last year, they talked about, I know Chris Jones specifically said, we're going to get 5 rings, 6 rings, 7 rings, whatever it went up to, however high it went. But it's hard to win 1. It's harder to win 2. And they learned that. And I think the Bucs are going to learn that too. Tom Brady obviously already knows that.
And one of the big factors is going to be what these other teams in the NFC do, to get back to our earlier points as it relates to going all in, trying to construct super teams with free agents to help Aaron Rodgers, to help Russell Wilson. What will these teams below the Buccaneers do to close the gap in the offseason? That's going to be a huge factor in whether or not the Bucs can get back. One more, and I resisted this, but we have time to fill. Matt KC9, I'm not familiar with that Twitter handle, asks, how many times will you seesaw on you love Kirk Cousins and want him to stay versus you love Kirk Cousins not and want him out. That goes back to something Sims has accused me of with Kirk Cousins. You love him not. Look, we had Cousins on last week. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great quarterback. The question is, are the Vikings good enough? And is the Vikings' attitude, we want to put together a championship team, or is it we're content to just be good enough? And frankly, I don't think they can move on from Cousins because what's their alternative? And Mike Zimmer needs to have a decent year or he's going to be fired. I think they're going to keep Cousins, and they're going to try to be just good enough. And just good enough means maybe get to the divisional round, maybe get lucky in the divisional round and get to the conference championship. But I just don't see the Vikings as putting together the kind of team in one offseason that can seriously contend. But I also see them keeping Kirk Cousins because if they go with anyone else.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Mike Zimmer is going into this season under intense pressure. He's on the hottest of hot seats when you start looking at the bets of the first coach to go. He's at the top of that list, Mike, and I just think he has a lot of pressure to at least get to the playoffs and possibly win a wild card game to keep his job. And it's going to be hard to do, even if he has Kirk Cousins, but it's going to be a little bit easier to do if he has Kirk Cousins on his side. But this team just looks like it's headed maybe to a rebuild after this season with a new coach and a new quarterback if they can't get it done.
And look, I said a year ago when Cousins was entering a contract year, Zimmer was entering a contract year, Dalvin Cook in a contract year, Rick Spielman in a contract year, my advice to the Wilfs was publicly, not privately, but publicly, I said, don't sign any of them. Make them earn it. And if they do, good problem to have. If they don't, it's easier to move away and start over again. That's the problem. If they were inclined to rebuild this year, it wasn't going to happen. Next year, it's going to be easier, but here's the other problem. If Kirk Cousins is on the team as of March 19, his $35 million salary for 2022 becomes fully guaranteed, and he told us last week he's not interested in an extension. He's got the Vikings the same spot, even better than what he had Washington in a couple of years ago. He's got 2 more years. He's going to make $56 million, and there's a damn thing the Vikings can do to keep him off the open market after 2022. So they're in a tough spot, and I still don't rule out the possibility of a trade. The problem is, who is the replacement? They love Teddy Bridgewater in Minnesota, but they may not love him as much as they thought once they see him play in comparison to Kirk Cousins.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.